Hey everyone, I'll be right with you. I'm just hooking up a couple pieces of equipment and I'll be right there. Hey, what's going on here? Crazy times here in Final Cut Pro world. Let me adjust this a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to do that up. There we go. It's more normal. How's everyone doing today? So we had the big news. We've been waiting for Final Cut Pro 10.5, but we got Logic 10.5 today, right? That's what we got so far. Let me just pull this up. Just getting adjusted here. This was a little bit of a surprise. Hello from London. Hello. Simon says, I don't think the Final Cut Pro will be released from today. We will find out. Felix says, hello from Mexico. Hello. Christopher Ashworth says, morning. It certainly is. So we're going to talk a little bit about what the heck's going on here. The important thing to remember, there's a couple of important things to remember about this. Hi from the UK. Morning from Oregon. Just going to check this. Favorites bar. So here's what we got. Hello from Howard County. Where the heck are you in Howard County? Morning from Canada. Yari in says hello from Helsinki, Finland. Yari, I remember you from last year, don't I? At the NAB, right? You were from NAB. Morning from Tucson. Daniel says, Satellite Beach, Florida. Morning from New York. So, Elkridge, Jeffrey Colley says he's from Elkridge. So there's a couple of interesting things going on here. I'm a Logic Pro user, so I pay attention to Logic Pro when it's updated and stuff. It's not like Pro Tools, where it's meant for post-production work in the film industry. It's more of a music tool. However, I still use it for doing audio. I do all my podcasts in there. So what's interesting is Logic Pro and Final Cut Pro have been in sync. The numbers have been in sync for a few years now. Maybe not the same day, within a day, within 2 days. If one is 10.5, the other is certainly going to be 10.5. Do you think that the Final Cut Pro team is going to allow Logic to go to 10.5 and they're not going to go to 10.5? Of course, I doubt that very much. Is there any evidence of that? Well, like I said, Logic Pro and Final Cut have been in sync. The numbers have been in sync for years. When 10.4.7 comes out, 10.4.8, they both update this about the same time, within a day or two. So here's Logic Pro, which was updated in the App Store. And let me see here. So we have a couple more comments. From your mouth to Tim's ears, Tim Cook. Simon says, good afternoon from Italy. However, I think that Logic is great. I think it's great too. I use it for both my recording studio, which is downstairs, and I also use it for more complex Final Cut Pro audio because it has a lot of features that I like. Scrolling timeline, it has buses, it has master faders, all kinds of neat things at Final Cut. I know they have lanes and stuff, but they don't have the sophistication of Logic, and I really don't expect them to have a full sophistication of Logic, but I do expect maybe to get some more stuff. I think there's a couple of things, 2 or 3 things that I think that Final Cut's going to have. Now, one of the things they said about Logic Pro, let me pull up the, what does it say? Let me pull up the Apple announcement. Now, where in the heck is that? Let me pull that up real quick. We're just live. I want to come on live and talk about this while it's fresh in the news, as I always do. Okay, here we go. Apple updates major update to Final Cut Pro. To Logic Pro. Apple's calling it the biggest update to Logic since the launch of Logic Pro 10. The biggest update to Logic. I have a feeling that Final Cut Pro 10.5 is going to be called the same. What do I base that on? Let me get back to here. I base that on the fact that it's been 29 months since 10.4 came out. So 10.4 came out 29 months ago, and that's a long time between full number updates. 29 months is a long time. So I've been expecting 10.5 to come out between now and WWDC. So they better have BRAW support. Well, we'll have to see. We'll have to see how that works out. I suspect that that's coming. We have to see if it comes this version or whatever. Just, when 10.5 comes out, it's going to be a big update. Final Cut Pro 10.5. They have to let it be out in public for a while and fix a few things, and then they can add more features to it. So if BRAW support is not there initially, I suspect that it'll be on the way. Remembering soundtrack, absolutely. The update is insane for music production. Do you think people use Pro Tools for historic reasons? Because I think Logic is just as capable. I think people use Pro Tools for film. One of the reasons is it's been around for a long time, just like Avid has. So, yes, they do use it because it's legacy. That's one of the reasons they do, for sure. But it's also, it seems to be more capable for doing film work than Logic. It has features that they need. It doesn't mean you can't do in Logic. It means you have to do a few things, perhaps some workarounds. Pro Tools used more for post-production because there's more ability, like Avid, or just works, and why change? It's one thing. First off, it's a great tool. Pro Tools is a great audio program. I've used it a little bit, but I've used Digital Performer and Logic instead because I like both of those. I like Logic a lot. I expect, one of the things that I expect in the new version of Final Cut, look, it could come out at any time. I got to keep checking the App Store because it could be out at any time. So let me just check. I'm going to keep checking. Still at 10.4.8. We're still at 10.4.8 on Final Cut Pro. Listen, Final Cut Pro 10.5 is certainly going to be here. and I think it'll be here today, tomorrow, maybe not today. They might want to give each app its own notoriety on the newsroom, so they don't want to crowd Final Cut Pro 10 in with Logic on the same day, perhaps. We don't know. I just said it's going to come out by or before WWDC, and I'm telling you, because Logic Pro's been updated once again in the middle of the week, Tuesday. Tuesday's a typical day. Christopher says, what will we see as the biggest change? I don't know what we're going to see as the biggest change, but I know it's going to be some audio things. It's going to have audio improvements. I'm guaranteeing you that. It needs it. Audio hasn't been updated for quite a while. Tim Musgrove says, I hope they add collaboration features. We'll have to see if that's going to be in the initial release of Final Cut Pro or if it's going to come later. Once again, 10.5 is the beginning of a new version of Final Cut Pro when it comes out. It's the beginning. It's not the end. It's the very beginning. So 10.5 comes out. They'll let it percolate for a while in the wild, get bug reports, anything, and they'll update it as necessary. If they don't have B-raw at the beginning, they'll have B-raw added later. If they don't have collaboration, hopefully that's coming. Too many people want that, I know. Daniel says, Zcam E2 just got ProRes RAW support, so that's interesting. What do you hope to have in the update from your list? Well, I'm perpetually wanting a scrolling timeline. Logic Pro has 2 scrolling timelines. You can have one in the editor, audio editor, and one in the sequence, and you can zoom into 2 different levels. So you can have an overview track where let me just check something here. Yeah, that's cool. You can have an overview track that's scrolling, and you can also have an audio file track that's zoomed in and scrolling at the same time. So one of the things that happened, let me pull this up. One of the things that happened when I updated to Logic Pro 10.5, it didn't say anything about the old projects have to update your projects. So that's curious. It also did not have to update the audio units. Usually it has to go through and scan all the audio units. Didn't happen this time. So that means it's looking at the old audio units cache, and it did not pop up a warning that said you can't open up old versions of Logic projects, which is curious. I'll be curious about that. Let me pull up the Logic support documents. Oh, that's ridiculous. It's going to the wrong screen. So here we got Logic reports. What's new in Final Cut Pro? That's Final Cut Pro. I want the Logic. Where the heck is the Logic? Huh. I don't want that one. Here we go. Here we go. Logic's 10.5 release notes. So there's a lot of new things with sampling and stuff.
Okay. I've got to change my settings here. Let's see. Can you see me now, or do I need to hang up and call back?
I just have the Skype signal for some odd reason. I had you. Did you change something?
Changed my camera, and then it didn't like me, so I can...
There you go. Now you're
Oh, you
back.
can see me? Okay.
Yeah, we can see you now.
Hold up, let me see if I can get this brighter. All right, what are we talking about?
Just coffee. Do you have coffee? Are you a coffee drinker? I don't even know.
You know, I don't drink coffee. We've talked about this.
Have we?
Yeah.
Well, I talked to a lot of people that do drink coffee, so I didn't remember that you did not.
Mm.
So we're talking about the surprise announcement. I mean, I don't recall Apple specifically. I don't know for a fact, but I don't recall Apple specifically having a press announcement for Logic Pro update in the past. I don't know. They maybe they have.
I mean, I know they've done Final Cut and
Yes, Final Cut for
press
sure.
releases.
Actually, I can hear you without the earplug.
Uh-oh. Is that a bad thing?
No, it's good.
Okay.
No, it's good. That's
Okay.
fine. I just have you down low. I'd rather do that than the earplug per se. And I have a noise gate on, so it cuts off after we're done talking. So there's a couple of things with Logic Pro being updated to 10.5. Number one is there's no way the Final Cut Pro team's going to allow them to be 10.5 and they're going to stay at 10.48. That's not going to happen. And the other thing is, in the last couple of years, Final Cut Pro and Logic have been in sync within a day or two. When one updates to the number, the second one updates to the number.
Have you seen Alex Gollner's post on Facebook?
I don't know if I have or not.
So one of the new features, or actually, I guess Robin Kurtz pointed this out originally. But if you go to the support page for the release notes for Logic Pro 10.5, one of the updates is support for Final Cut XML 10 or 1.9.
Which we're not there yet?
We're at 1.8.
So there you go. That's exactly what I'm saying. They're going to listen. The teams have a little bit of competition, but I guarantee you they're scheduled tight. So if we don't see it today, we're going to see it tomorrow, probably. Very, very likely.
I would imagine they would want to do it before the post-production world with the
yes,
to have the whole Apple tracked.
Absolutely, because it makes them work. It makes them redo all their sessions. All their screen grabs and everything have to be redone.
I like the wording of this. There's a lot of release notes, by the way. This is a huge update for Logic, but it says Final Cut Pro 10 XML version 1.9 documents now import correctly. So let's see if they're...
I'm not convinced that they're not going to come out. It's not going to come out today, because what is today? Today's Tuesday.
I just think it's funny. It says now import correctly, because we've had so many issues with Final Cut XML and Logic.
I wonder what that means. Now imports correctly.
Now imports correctly is what it means, apparently.
Well, that doesn't... It's been incremental. It's been getting better, little bit. But so Final Cut Pro 10.5, listen, the Apple press announcement said this is the biggest update to Logic since 10 came out. Because Logic went from 7 to 8 to 9 to 10. They didn't skip 8 and 9 like Final Cut did. They incremented slowly. So this is the biggest update since Logic Pro 10 came out. I got a feeling that Final Cut's going to say the same kind of a press release.
I think it'll be similar. Oh, it's got to be feature rich, considering that we haven't had a significant update since 2018, and we haven't had a point update since 2017. I'm sure that it'll be have a lot in it. Hopefully a lot of stuff that we like. And I noticed another thing about the press release, which was that they talked about more support on the iPad and iPhone. Let me see. There's so many updates. Logic Remote is a free companion app that allows users to pair an iPhone or iPad with their Mac to control and perform Logic features and instruments using multi-touch. Logic Remote is receiving a major update to allow triggering of sounds and live loops, browsing and adding loops, and applying remix effects to a session. So I don't think that necessarily qualifies for the rumor that Logic Pro 10 is coming to the iPad, but this is exactly the kind of stepping stone I'd want to see for Final Cut Pro 10. Last time we were on, I talked about the color board being supported on the iPad. That would be pretty cool. So I don't know. Logic's been doing that. It's been doing stuff for the iPad and iPhone for a while, though.
Yes, it has been, and I've always wanted a companion app for Final Cut. You think it would be like the color wheels would be something that you'd like to see there?
Well, I've always felt like the color board specifically was designed for multiple.
Okay.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Because of the color wheels is fine for point and click. It'd be great with one of these type of interfaces, which right now only works with Command Post. But with Command Post, you can use this and other tangent boards to control Final Cut and the color wheels. But I always felt like that was, in my mind, was the design intention of the color board. I could be totally off base, but it just looked like something I would want to grab with multiple fingers. So,
I agree with you. So we got a lot of comments today. For the love of logic, let Final Cut Pro 10.5 come with multiple eGBU support. Playback only taps once. It doesn't have multiple eGBU support at this point? Final Cut doesn't?
I know that there's been a lot of questions of why the Final Cut doesn't tap into more of the GPU like Resolve does. Resolve uses GPUs to accelerate everything, which is partly why on like a Mac Pro or a high-end machine, Resolve exports. In fact, even on my MacBook Pro, Resolve exports incredibly fast, and you can see it's not just using the CPU, it's using the GPU. Whereas Final Cut it's picky about what it uses the GPU for, and I don't know about multiple GPUs because I just have the one built into my MacBook Pro. So I know that people didn't like having to pick between internal GPU and eGPU.
Gotcha.
I'm not sure. I guess you've got a module. But
right. I got 32 gigabyte single GPU. Radeon Pro 2 something or other.
Right. So I'm not 100% sure why, like how it's tapping in or what the decisions they made. My feeling is that since they're Apple and they're working with the hardware team, they're trying to utilize the hardware in the best way, the most efficient way possible. But maybe there's some things they aren't doing for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't, since I never had an eGPU, I always got a kick out of people that have a MacBook Pro, they have an eGPU, they have another display, and maybe a mouse. And I say, well, that's an iMac.
Yeah.
That's an iMac. If you're going to have that, all those cables and stuff, why not just get an iMac? Typically, you have bigger real estate, screen real estate for sure, and then you have a mouse and you have lots of power.
The trick is packing up that iMac in a backpack and taking it with you. So if you are, like I right now, my computer, especially with COVID-19 where I've just been at home, my computer is just basically, I might as well have had an iMac. But prior to that, I was taking it with me to all sorts of places. So, if you are...
No, absolutely. If you need to be portable, I completely understand. But I just got a kick at it when I see these things. It just all these cables and different connections and stuff. I'm saying, well,
Yeah.
get an iMac. It's all compact into one. But if you got to travel, obviously, that's what you do. As a matter of fact, I got a 2019. Did they have two models of the MacBook Pro in 2019? The 15 first and then the 16? So I got the 15 when it came out because I had my 2016. And I wanted to get a newer one, so I got the 15. But I might get a new one if they come out one in 2020, just because here's one of the reasons. I can trade it in my old one to Apple, and they make it so darn easy. They pay for shipping. They gave me a fair price on my iMac. So if they give me a fair price on my MacBook Pro, I might just trade it in for the heck of it. I don't use it that much.
Yeah, I was hoping that they would have like the micro LED technology out, and
Why?
because you potentially get an HDR screen and a higher quality screen with better pixel contrast. So that's been rumored for the iPad, and it's also kind of a rumor for the MacBook Pros as having micro LED, a micro LED panel as opposed to the screen we've got right now. So that would be cool.
That would be cool. That would be cool. So here's the curious thing. Since Logic 10.5 has come out, this is right around NAB time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, within a month. Within a month. They're having the online version of NAB starting tomorrow. The online version of NAB is going to be tomorrow. So that probably means they were planning on something around NAB originally before the virus hit.
Probably.
Because it's within a month, 3 weeks, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, they probably had something ready and then that hit, and then they were scrambling to kind of come up with a different plan.
Setback. Right. So we got a comment for you, Brad. It says, Simon says, "Hi, Brad. Off the Tracks will be updated for 10.5."
No, but I'm really close on releasing a YouTube video, and I'm hesitant to actually release it because it's talking about features I like that make Final Cut unique compared to other NLEs, and I'm kind of wondering if I should wait another day or two before releasing it, or maybe I'll just release it and then do a follow-up of here's the new features that make Final Cut Pro 10 unique. So the idea, I've been talking about it for a long time on your show, but I'm finally buckling down in the last couple of weeks. I've really been spending a lot of time preparing material to release onto YouTube. I just kind of had to finish off some jobs in the real world, and now that I find more time on my hands because there's not new jobs coming up, I'm actually able to get back to that. But
Well, that's true.
No re-release of the full documentary. If you look at it,
yet.
I intentionally tried to not focus too much on updates and releases. When we were shooting it, 10.3 had just come out, and I was so excited about that. And I asked a lot of people questions about 10.3, but as it took more time to finish the film, I realized that that excitement or those responses were going to be quickly outdated when 10.4 ruled out. So I just abandoned that and focused more on the actual subject of the disruption and the change.
Right.
And
And
not so much on individual features.
I know some people who are working on Final Cut Pro tutorials, and one of the things I told them, I said, you might want to wait a little bit because if 10.5 comes out, you're going to have to do new screenshots for a lot of the stuff because Logic looks different. And by the way, that image that we had, the image that we have of Logic is the one that was leaked.
Oh.
It is exactly the one that was leaked. Absolutely.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Wow.
So that's interesting. It was absolutely a Logic Pro 10 leak. Let me pull that in here. Here's the actual screen grab. And this one right here, the one on the left, absolutely was the one that was leaked online. Somebody did a boo-boo and picked the wrong graphic. That was a month ago, 6 weeks ago, something like that.
Yeah, it was about a week or a month ago. Sorry.
So the first thing I was up this morning, just checking things like I normally do, and first thing I saw on our Twitter feed from my Logic friends was the companion app was updated. And I said, wait a minute. The Logic app, iPad app was updated? That doesn't quite make sense if Logic's not updated at the same time. And of course, when I went to check, Logic was indeed updated. Very cool. I mean, it's exciting times. And you're right. Apple has a free track. Post-production world starts, does it start tomorrow?
Well,
I know
the
NAB Sunday.
Apple track doesn't start till Sunday, but
Sunday. But I think post-production world might start before that. Maybe not. Maybe it starts on Sunday at the same time. And that's, Premiere and a bunch of other things. But the Logic, that's $299, Future Media Conferences. They changed their name from Concepts to Conferences. I got to remember that. Still the same initials, FMC, but now it's Future Media Conferences. They've had, the Apple and them have teamed up, and they have a free Apple track. Follow my Twitter feed. I have it posted. I posted it there this morning. So this year, for this track, which supposedly was going to be NAB, plus or minus a month, is much more expansive than Final Cut Pro and Apple have been in the last couple of years at NAB. Because the last couple of years has been a much smaller classes for the Future Media Concepts track. This one's much bigger, it seems like. Not seems like, it is. It is. So that was good to begin with.
Yeah, I imagine that the marketing team has teamed up with the Future Media Concepts people to really bring a lot of people on. In fact, one of the people on there I've noticed was Lee Herbert, and some of the content that we're seeing is similar to what we kind of saw at the Creative Summit, but I'm hoping that there's a lot of new insights and things. Actually, I need to pull that up.
So Robin Kurz says multiple eGPUs is completely nonsensical, as is even just one. I'm not sure why. Let me see what he says. He says you've already hitting the ceiling hard with just one, barely 1/4 of the maximum possible performance. So what is a second one supposed to do? For Final Cut Pro, I guess he's talking about. I don't know. Motion might be better use of it.
Yeah, I guess I think that I would imagine that they are optimizing it as much as they can internally. I don't know why you would get two eGPUs. I don't even know how that would work, but
for Final Cut, right?
I could see, well, just even if you're buying a laptop or a Mac Mini, you're getting two eGPUs. How would it know which one to use? But the question I would have is if you had like a discrete GPU inside your MacBook Pro and an eGPU, is there a way for it to, channel the tasks and leverage both? And it appears like there isn't. You kind of have to pick either or. But then the bigger question is, if I've got two GPUs and an Afterburner card and a Mac Pro, how does Final Cut leverage that compared to other applications? And the only thing I've noticed is just how insanely fast Resolve is at exporting. I bought my, I upgraded from a 2018 MacBook Pro to a 2019 MacBook Pro, and Resolve seemed like it was almost 3 or 4 times faster. Just from that, it was at least twice as fast. And in some exports, it was going way faster, and it was within 24 hours that I was testing the same timeline. And I don't think I've seen the same performance boost from Final Cut Pro 10. So that was really interesting to me, especially considering how long it took them to do the Metal rewrite. But Final Cut was already really, really fast before the Metal update. So
right. That's what I think, too. I think that it already was fast. Metal 2, well, Metal's been supported in Final Cut for years. Metal 2 was the new update. So they already had underpinnings for Metal. They just had to change it to metal too. Chris Hawking told me that. It's been in, metal support's been in Final Cut for a while. So what happened with the sessions from the Creative Summit? I thought they would be put online for everybody by now. Now, you had to contact Future Media about that. I think they're available. They were supposed to be for 90 days.
Wasn't that a if you wanted to see the Creative Summit presentations, you had to pay? It was a paid
a little
thing?
extra, $99 or $90 or something extra. Yes.
Oh, so is this somebody asking like they were at the summit or they paid for that and they're still waiting for Future Media to?
But I noticed on the Future Media site, they have a tab for past conferences to view stuff. So they might have them online for people that didn't go. Well, they did. They had a price of, it was like $2.99 or something like that, if you didn't attend the summit to get the sessions. But I think they're probably going to be available. Why wouldn't they make them available for a fee or whatever? So Gary says, well, that's what I'm saying. You have to pay for it for a fee.
But if you already paid for it, I don't understand why. I don't know. I didn't pay for them, so I haven't been paying attention.
You didn't pay for them?
The downloading sessions? No.
The sessions, yeah.
I was there. I saw what I wanted to see. You remember all that
stuff? Yeah.
Sure. I know I can reach out to the people and ask them questions just if I have more.
Exactly.
But
so
they were good presentations, by the way.
Yes, they absolutely were. They absolutely were. So Gary says, NAB Express, May 13th to 14th, Post-Production World, May 17th to the 19th. So Post-Production World starts on Sunday, and one of the tracks is for Final Cut Pro. Well, they call it the Apple ecosystem.
Yeah, I think they're going to throw in LumaFusion and iPhoneography and everything like that.
Right.
So yeah, we've got, it's pretty interesting. It kicks off with Abba Shapiro, who's a really good trainer.
Yes,
and then
he is.
You've got Michael Cioni's moderating a panel with Brad Jones and Jeff Fortune. Have to look up there. We know Brad Jones. Anyway.
So Christopher Ashworth says, don't mention the R word, which I guess is resolved.
Hey, Blackmagic was the sponsor of the Creative Summit, so I'm gonna mention it. And I use the two hand in hand all the time. I don't pick and choose like some people. I'm not like, I'm switching to Resolve. I just use the right tool for the right job. When I need Resolve, I use Resolve. So we got, yeah, that's interesting. So there's a lot of content. Motion VFX Masterclass, that's pretty cool. No, I don't want to chat with somebody from Future Media Concepts right now. Go away, chat window.
Yes, they do that all the time.
Okay, Brad Jones has his own separate case study. And then we've got Patrick and Vincent who are going to talk about faith-based and their workflow. And then we've got Photo Joseph doing the mobile post-production. That's pretty cool. Photo Joseph is somebody I've been watching a lot more recently, and he is very, very good at what he does. He did the Apple presentations, I think from like 2001-ish to 2009, somewhere around there.
Right.
And he was like the Aperture and Final Cut Studio demo guy. And then he's been just doing his own thing since then. But he'll be editing and color correction on the iPad and learn how to import your projects to Final Cut Pro 10. It's interesting they don't mention LumaFusion. I don't know how you edit and color correct on the iPad without LumaFusion. iMovie? I don't know if you can color correct iMovie on the iPad. Shioni's got making music in Final Cut Pro 10, which he did a Lassie Pug presentation, and it looks like it's not online, or it's not up anymore. I don't know why, but anyway. Whoa, and that's just day one. So yeah, the website I've got up here is ppw-online.com/FCPX Apple-ecosystem.
Right. I have it up now too. I have it
And
up now on the screen so that people can see it. So day one, like you said, Apple Shapiro, Michael Cioni, our good friend Patrick Southern, Motion VFX, all kinds of stuff. But it's specifically Apple ecosystem. So it's either the iPhones or it's Final Cut Pro related. Michael's making music in Final Cut Pro, which he's been doing for a while.
But he's going to do a making of Frame.io's workflow from home.
Yep.
If Patrick's going to join him for that at all. And then we've got Alex Lindsay and Storm, who's been at the Creative Summit. She's deaf, and she does a lot of she gives a lot of helpful information on captions and how to do them right, and maybe how to make them better than they are. And then we get to Lee talking about ProRes RAW. Actually, this is an interesting one because he's going to talk about raw to log workflows in SDR versus HDR. But since we're streaming it over Zoom, you're not really going to be able to see the HDR content, unfortunately. But it's still good, information. And Catalina does tone mapping, so at least you'll be able to see something. It won't be all blown out. And then it looks like we've got Sam's lady, Aubrey, is going to be doing iPhone videography for professionals. So
what about non-professionals?
They have a picture of Aubrey, but they just say led by We Make Movies. So,
Right. Yeah, we've met her a couple of times. NAB typically. I met her at the summit or not, but NAB for sure. Yeah. So speaking of that, tomorrow's Wednesday. Tomorrow, I am getting an anamorphic lens for my iPhone Pro 11.
Wow.
Moment. I got the Moment system. So it takes a case, the anamorphic lens, and then you got to get an app that'll de-squeeze it in the camera so you can get an accurate picture of what you're doing. There's a couple of apps. Of course, the main one, I forget what it is. There's a couple of them. They make their own app. So you can de-squeeze it. So it takes the 4K image and, of course, optically squeezes it down, and then you stretch it back out. So I'll be playing with that once I get that. I was looking at it, and I'm looking at this one. There's two different brands, Moment and another one, Sand something, back and forth, and I end up getting the Moment one. They've been fantastic with responsiveness to my order and stuff. I had a couple things I wanted to change. Because if you film with that thing outside, they said you need a neutral density filter. You really need one. So.
Yeah. So does the Filmic app de-squeeze anamorphic images as well?
That's one of them. Filmic Pro is one of them. I have that. And I got they had a pack on sale right before Christmas, not the raw pack, but the whatever the heck, the expanded dynamic range and professional pack. They had it on sale, so I bought that as well for them. And then, of course, but I think Moment has their own app that does the same thing, and there's another app that de-squeezes as well. So I'll be trying it out. I obviously won't be doing everything anamorphically. That'd be ridiculous. You can't do a selfie anamorphically because the lens only fits on the other side.
Well, Lee actually shared on his Facebook page, Capture.inc, shared a pilot for a series he wants to make with all shot on iPhones about taking video and photos with your iPhones. And it looks really, really good. The quality is really great. So I don't know if you've checked that out, but
I did see that. I've been impressed. I've been watching. The Moment guys have a very popular YouTube channel, the guys that are involved with making the Moment lenses, and they go on shoots all the time. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, the other lens I want to get is the 55 millimeter, I think it is. The next one I get, which will be it'll be a zoom. It's a 2x zoom, but you can put it on the 2x zoom of the iPhone and you get 4x optical zoom, which is what I wanted. And the thing about the Moment that I like, it's just a quarter turn and it clicks on and it clicks off. The other brand, you had to screw it on like you do normally a lens, back, keep on going. So I decided to go with the Moment, and brand. It's just a quarter turn and it clicks in place, and then a quarter turn and it clicks off. So I can change the lenses very fast. Can't use it on the ultra wide. You can only use it on the regular lens and the zoom lens. Doesn't work on the ultra wide, whatever they call that.
Probably, yeah. You probably get vignetting or
Yeah,
major issues.
And the
probably doesn't
f-stop
cover it either.
The f-stop's not as good.
And they're probably in different places, or the lenses are in. Whoops, the
Yeah,
lenses
they are
in different places, so
yeah,
it probably doesn't. Well, I keep refreshing the Apple page, just hoping magically. I guess I could also try refreshing the App Store, but so far it is quiet. It could still happen today. As far as an update.
Yeah, it could. It certainly could. I just don't think it's going to, because I think Apple's going to give Logic the newsroom space and not crowd Final Cut Pro in there. But who the heck knows? I mean, this is what I've been saying. I said Honor before WWDC. It just makes sense. They don't need an event to update either Logic or Final Cut Pro 10. So, of course, this audience is more concerned about Final Cut Pro 10. I don't know, maybe 10% of the people use Logic, but it's still, everybody's excited because Logic is updated to 10.5, and that's what they're waiting for in Final Cut Pro 10. Are they going to update it? They're not going to update it. The coronavirus, this, that, WWDC, and it's like, no, they're going to update it. Of course they're going to update it. We'll see what they've been working on all this time.
It's interesting that in the press release they've got they got a quote from a couple different Grammy nominated or winning music producers talking about Logic Pro 10. It'd be interesting to see what quotes who would be talking about the new 10.5.
Well, they haven't contacted you for a quote?
Nope.
Are you sure? Check your email. Check your email there.
Nope. I haven't heard anything from Apple. Nobody's calling my phone or sending me emails about the new version. So if you want to go after anybody, I would say look at the speakers for the post-production world Apple ecosystem. And maybe some of them might know, but they're probably not going to say anything. So, or they get in big trouble. So, yeah, I don't know. I know that at previous creative summits, like when 10.3 dropped, they didn't tell any of the presenters. So everybody was scrambling and like, should I update? Should I not update? Well, I have to update because the interface changes. So they're all scrambling with their demos at the last minute because Apple didn't think to give them a heads up.
Yeah, I bet there's Logic tutorials that are coming out today. I'm not sure. Maybe Ripple. Yeah,
Ripple is a good place to look. They usually Apple coordinates with them and makes sure that they have updates like right on the same day. Yeah. And there's always these videos of what's new in the new version. So
yeah, people will be doing them on YouTube. Of course, people will be scrambling to get their updates out. I'm not going to do any unless they relate to Final Cut Pro for the most part. I don't do Logic tutorials. There's people. I'm like a mid-level Logic guy. I'm a more advanced Final Cut Pro guy, but I'm a mid-level Logic guy. I'm not that involved with MIDI too much or anything. And I know my way around it, and I really like it as an audio editor. I think it's fantastic as an audio editor. I use it for my podcasts.
So here's a big question. With the release of Final Cut Pro 10.5, will we see any... it'd be interesting to see the level of excitement about it. I remember both with 10.3 and 10.4, I saw people who had turn their backs to the Final Cut, take another look at it. There were certainly a lot of articles to that nature. And I'm interested to see if 10.5, is kind of this big moment where you see a lot more positivity and excitement for the application. we'll see. We've got a really good user group and a really good base. But I still in 2020 keep running into people that really, really hate Final Cut Pro. They don't know anything about it. They haven't paid attention since 2011. But I had
Hmm.
a guy block me this week.
On Facebook?
Uh-huh.
What did you say to him that got blocked?
So a friend of mine posted on my Facebook about my documentary, and another friend was very like supportive and positive. She commented, and then she tagged this other guy who apparently cuts a lot of TV movies in Hollywood, and he just like started railing against Final Cut and said nobody uses that, and everybody here's on Avid, and everybody else is on Premiere, and Apple totally screwed up everything. So I saw that. I took my time. I thought about a reply, and I said, I think Dylan said it best. Don't criticize what you can't understand. Apple did make the doc. Well, he thought Apple made the documentary. That was funny. I said Apple didn't make the documentary. I did, and I
Right.
invite you to watch it with an open mind. You might be exposed to some new ideas that will prepare you for what's coming next. And then I quoted Dylan again and said, "For the times they are a changing." And then I put a link to the bridge cut on YouTube. And then he just says, he's like, "Sorry, Final Cuts. Apple screwed it up, and it's never coming back." And
Well, of course
yeah.
we know that's not true. I
Well,
mean,
I said your perspective is limited. Oh, because he says I've never met any professional editors who use Final Cut. So I said your perspective's limited. I've met professional editors from around the world who use Final Cut to do high-end
absolutely.
work. And I said, but that pales in comparison to the millions of people using this software in new and exciting ways. It's more successful than its predecessor, Final Cut 7.
Right.
And
Right.
he just laughed at that. And then I can't click on his name. I can't find him on Facebook, his comments. But I can go to my wife's Facebook and see his comments, but I can't see
Right.
them on mine.
Right.
And I was like, what a silly thing to do.
Well, I've been studying persuasion over the last couple of years, how to persuade people, how to do things from a bunch of different authors. One of the things you'll find is when two people get in an argument, when they leave the argument, neither one have changed their mind 95% of the time. Nobody's going to change your mind. You're not going to change their mind if they come into an argument. Typically that doesn't happen. The people are invested in their beliefs, and in order to accept something new, they have to say, "Well, okay, I was wrong," and that's difficult for people to do. I'm not saying it's justified. I'm not saying it's not unusual. That's the usual thing is people don't change their minds.
Yeah.
So and now these are people that are more hardcore in their beliefs, not somebody who's more open-minded. So
Yeah.
if you're more
And
open-minded or on the fence,
well, I think that's the bottom line here to in arguments like these that I mean, I was a little playful in my reply, but I as far as I can tell, I wasn't making personal attacks or being
sure,
rude. In
sure,
fact, later I even said, like, look, I agree that in Hollywood they all use Avid. I just think that that's a limited perspective.
it's very
That
small.
the video's a big video. The whole, even professional videos bigger than Hollywood,
Sure,
and and it just was, obviously wasn't getting through, and this guy just didn't want to
well,
hear it to
that's
that
what I'm
level.
saying.
But when you're that extreme, I think there's not reason or logic or thinking that goes into that. It's all emotion, and we've known that
Right,
from the
right.
beginning. It's just this emotional thing, and obviously Final Cut Pro, the original Final Cut Pro, was an emotional buy-in that people made because they wouldn't have been so hurt by Final Cut Pro 10 if it wasn't largely just an emotional connection and problem they had with with that sort of change and killing the thing they loved and not understanding the thing that replaced it.
Listen, I never on the original, when the original one when 10.0 came out on June the 21st, even before that from the Super Meet, and people were like you said, they had an emotional reaction to it. I've never had emotional reactions to software. It's like they thought it was their wives or their girlfriends.
Yeah,
That would be
or like Apple took their child in the backyard and shot it or something like
well,
it's
that's a little extreme, but
but
that's what I'm saying.
that's how they react. It's
I
just
mean,
so
it's
emotional.
software. It's
Yeah.
software. You
Yeah.
know.
I mean, I'm definitely passionate about Final Cut Pro 10, but more about what it represents than the software itself. It's
Right.
the software could get replaced, tomorrow, and I'd be very interested in what that change looks like. It's not, you know, but I don't know. People, their identities were tied up in this thing, so it's just
Yes.
interesting that 9 years later, there's this whole group of people, and I've had this conversation multiple times. This is the most extreme, by the way. Other conversations I've had are much more like, oh, really? They've continued. Apple's continued to update the software. I didn't know that. It's that kind of thing. But this guy was just like, no, I know
Well,
everything, and you
yeah.
can't. And I have to also wonder, it's like I remember Justine talking about negative comments on our YouTube channel, and it's like, well, they're just having a bad day. You kind of have to look through that lens of a lot of people, or especially I think, imagine if you're editing in Hollywood right now and the jobs are drying up pretty quick. You've got to be hurting in other ways, and so lashing out is kind of that primal fear response.
Right. Right. And it's like I said, the emotional response. Listen, if you based your entire hardware studio around Final Cut Classic, and we're expecting Final Cut 8, I completely understand that you were pissed off when 10 came out without support for hardware and stuff. I understand that, but still, it is just software. You have
Yeah.
other options. But I didn't get involved with all that arguing back and forth. I mean, I let Bill Davis do that.
Yeah, you just let Davis off the leash, and he'll
Right.
he'll
When I
bark
worked
in
at
the
the National
corner.
Archives, I had my friend and my manager was this 5'8" guy. I'm about not 5'8", 6'8". I'm like
Okay.
6'3", so he towered over me. And whenever we crossed Pennsylvania Avenue, I always said, "You are always going to be on the traffic side when we cross. No matter what we do, you're going to be on the traffic side. So if anybody comes speeding through the light, they're going to hit you, not take me out." And same thing with Bill Davis. Bill, go get him. I'll be right behind you there, buddy. I'm not really interested in arguing that much about anything. I just don't. It just doesn't work. You use what you want to use. That's fine. But the thing is, when they say, well, it doesn't work in Hollywood. Well, we know it does. We've
Yeah.
seen major films that were done with Final Cut Pro. So that's completely false. We know they have. There's been not just one. There's been, probably 3 or 4 major films, and then plenty of other documentaries and TV, and et cetera, et cetera. So we know it does. None of
Yeah.
the NLEs have everything, of course.
No. No. Well, and that's like I said. I probably should get back to maybe recording this video with an ending that says, "And stay tuned because there'll be an update for 10.5." But that's something that I've been wanting to talk about in a YouTube video, is just what are the features that make Final Cut Pro not only unique but well suited to those larger jobs, because there's things I can just do so much faster in Final Cut that I can't do in other software, that makes it always my go-to if there's a long form feature length project. I remember in the Final Cut 7 days, this same thing kind of happening, where you would hear people say, well, it's okay for commercial work or music videos, but it's not okay for, television shows or feature films. Like, they have to categorize the software. And the same thing happens with Final Cut 10. It's great for YouTube videos and quick jobs, but can it really handle a bigger project? And I think absolutely, not only can it handle that, there's features in there that if you're making a short YouTube video, um, you know, you're probably still favoriting, you're probably still keywording, but not to the degree that the organization matters, like on a feature length or series, documentary series, where you've got to create a giant database. And maybe if you're doing corporate video too, that's where that, giant keyword database is going to be really, really helpful. And those are just, that's just the start of little things. Or like, just because it's a magnetic timeline, it meant for me that I was later in the process. This is the other weird thing is people look at like a track-based timeline and think, well, that's got more of the features I need for a big feature film or big project. And I'm like, actually, it's more rigid. And what that means is when I'm later in the process and the director says to me, hey, I really want to trim this thing or cut this shot out, it takes me I have to do a lot more moves because I've got sound effects and other things built up on that edit. And in Final Cut Pro 10, I just do the change because it's really, really, really easy. And so for me, on a long form project, I much prefer having a magnetic timeline than having a track-based timeline where I have to like worry about clip collisions, overwriting things, things going out of sync. And those are just things I don't have to worry about. I just keep my clip connections in check where I'm editing, and I don't have to think about everything on either side of the timeline.
Right. So one of the things we talked about Final Cut Pro 10.5 when it arrives is whether there is going to be a charge for it after all this time. Well, since Logic Pro 10.5 came out, there was no charge. Probably not.
I don't think so. I
They
don't think so.
They can according to their terms of service, but at any point. So Ryan Swan says a lot of companies took a lot of time and money in training and plugins for original FCP. I can see why they are mad. Change is difficult when you are invested. Of course, I understand. I completely understand that. If Apple had given them a little pre-warning that things were going to change as much as it did, or given us Final Cut Pro 7.1.
There's no doubt that when it comes to trainers and it comes to, sorry, I just got a hard drive that my wife brought into my room. It was shipped back to me. Anyway, there's no doubt that in terms of training and in terms of third-party plugins and whatnot, but there was a huge opportunity. If you look at companies like Motion VFX, for example,
right,
or Ripple Training, they made that transition, and it was an opportunity to create a whole new batch of new products and new services. So I think it's they had to update and change with that, but I think the power of Motion into Final Cut Pro 10 is much stronger than it was in the Final Cut Studio days. So there's a lot more opportunities for third parties in terms of plugins, and there's
right.
Are you not going to change based off of that? That seems silly to me.
And our friends Philip Hodgetts always talks about if anybody should have been mad, he should have been mad, because they lost how much of their work overnight. But they got through it. They didn't throw a hissy fit. Now, listen, I'm not saying I don't understand. I completely understand. But
yeah.
when you criticize things, do it in an adult fashion, not a child, not a childish fashion. Oh, I hate Final Cut, or I hate Premiere, or I hate Avid. Yeah, I mean, just do it professionally. Do it as an adult. I mean, no, of course it can be criticized. Nobody's saying that. It just do it as an adult.
No, they could have made the transition better.
Yeah, well, they know that.
But again, it's still there's a lot of valid things, but it still comes down to that emotion, because a lot of these types of editors that are complaining, it had nothing to do for them with plugins or training. It just had to do with a new piece of software they didn't understand. They still made a leap to a different platform after the release of Final Cut Pro 10. So for them, it was just the idea of change. But I agree that, there's definitely some things that, and Apple knows, I'm sure, that there's things they could have done to make that pill a little easier to swallow. Get everybody on board before the ship.
Yeah, even Apple itself, they don't agree on things. As you in your documentary with Randy said, he wanted something else to happen than what happened.
Yeah, and I have to wonder how well that plan wouldn't have worked. But what we're talking about is in the documentary, Randy states, and in an interview he did with Alex Gollner at the first Creative Summit, he says that his idea was to give away a copy of 7 with every copy of 10. And they did the same thing with iMovie '08, and it didn't really make a difference. People were still reporting that they were killing the original iMovie, and the new iMovie didn't have as many features.
Right, I remember that. I
And
remember it
even
very
though it came
specifically.
with you, if you got iMovie '08, you got iMovie '06, but HD or whatever. But people are still complaining about it. And then not only that, the huge shift with Final Cut Pro 10 was that it was on the Apple App Store. So then the big question is, Final Cut 7 is something that you get a box and bring it home. Well, you're not going to ship boxes to everybody who bought Final Cut 10, and it would be really confusing to put Final Cut Pro 7 on the App Store, right? Like with Final Cut 10. So how do you facilitate that? I guess it could be some sort of backdoor download, but um,
Well,
it,
you
it
know, I
just it just the mechanics of it were limiting because they were changing the way they were delivering the software. Is all I'm saying. Um, and the other argument is, are people going to give the new thing a chance, or are they going to take it seriously? If you're giving everybody Final Cut Pro 7, are they going to do they know that Apple's really committed to Final Cut Pro 10, or are they going
yeah.
to assume that it's something that Apple's just trying out, and if we don't
So
like it, they'll take it away?
two things about the update that's been talked about forever and ever. When Aperture was being end of life, Apple pre-announced it by 6 months or 9 months. They
Yeah.
said, this is end of life. We're going to stop this. We're going to have a new app coming out. I think it took 9 months later. So that's one of the things they could have done. Obviously, they shouldn't have stopped selling Final Cut Pro 7 the day the Final Cut Pro 10 was launched. And I still say they should have given us just one small update to Final Cut Pro 7 at that point. 7.1, 7.0.4, whatever, as a token. And they could have said 7 is going away in 6 months. To have overlap, remember Steve Martin with the cross dissolve instead of a
Yeah.
hard cut in the documentary?
Yeah.
So, but hey, everybody knows that. They know it. They would do it differently today. So when 10.5 comes out, there's going to be no hard cut. But one of the things about Logic, when I download, first off, everybody, back up your Final Cut Pro 10.4.8 application before 10.5 comes out. Before you update Logic Pro 10.5, zip Logic Pro 10.4.8. So if you need it, you have it. So I zipped it this morning. I updated to 10.5. There was nothing when I opened up the project about old libraries. Nothing about this first. You have to update your library, not libraries. They don't call them libraries. You have to update your projects to work with this version of Logic. None of that popped up. The other thing that didn't happen, normally when you update Logic, you have to rescan the audio units. Didn't happen. So Logic Pro 10.5 is using the old AU cache, AU for audio unit cache, that Logic Pro 10.4.8 uses. So both of those were interesting. I wanted to see if it made me, save an old version or whatever, but it didn't do that. So I guess maybe you can go back a little bit.
Yeah. I was just realizing that as I'm checking the App Store, it's not even updating to Logic.
Well, mine was updated.
But yeah, so I've still got 10.4.8, but I'm not seeing the 10.5 update. I don't understand how the App Store works, or why
I don't
sometimes it
either.
takes a while to push
I don't either.
updates, or how I don't even know how to refresh the.
I just copy and paste the Final Cut Pro X and Logic Pro X and paste it in the search field because it's I don't know either. There's a
Oh, that's a good point. If I look up Logic Pro 10, um,
but anyway, in a
there's
day
the
or
update.
two, this is going to be available. I'm quite
I
certain.
I just ignored all your advice and I clicked update on Logic Pro 10 without backing up 10 4.8. But here's the thing, I'm not doing big projects in Logic Pro 10. I
Right.
actually mostly use this application to double check my AAFs before I send them off to people in Pro Tools. So
Oh, okay.
I don't do a lot of I don't do a lot of playing around in Logic as much as I'd like. When I was in college, I actually learned Logic Pro 8, I think it was at the time. I took a computer music class, and that's where I learned a lot more about mixing and buses and auxiliary sends and doing a lot of patching and things like that and adding filters and figured out what they did. So that was actually a really cool class because I didn't anticipate learning as much about audio mixing as I did. But it's been a long time since I've actually gone through and recorded and mixed in Logic.
Yeah, it's changed. I mean, I've been using Logic since version 7, I think. And 7 and 8 both required a dongle, USB dongle, and I don't know if it was the one that everybody hates or not. I think it was actually the iLock system. But the
Yeah,
first two,
I don't have a dongle with the Logic that I bought.
it stopped, I think, in 9, but 7 and 8 both required. I'm pretty sure that I have the dongle still.
Hold on just a minute.
Sure. So yeah, I had the dongle. I still have the Logic Pro. I think this was 7 dongle. There you go. What version is that?
So this is Logic Studio Academic because I was in college at the time, and why not save some money? Yeah, it doesn't have any dongle, but I'm trying to figure out
What version is it?
That's a good question. Got to blur out the. It's Logic Pro 8.
Yeah, it must have been. They must have stopped it at 8 then, because they had it for 7 and for sure had it.
I only have software coupons. I don't know what that. Anyway, remember all these manuals?
Yeah, I still have mine. I clean stuff out and I say, "Well, I'm going to throw this away." I do, but I'd rather give it away. I remember the longest time.
Somebody might need it for a documentary or something. So
Yeah, exactly. Logic documentary.
Sure.
So Gary says Logic Pro 10.5 is available on the Canadian App Store.
Yeah, I'm downloading it now. I just did what you said. I searched for it because for whatever reason it's not populating my updates. So it is updated now to 10.5.
Yes, Nicholas says the dongle was there before Apple bought it. Yeah, I remember that. eMagic, is that what it was? Logic?
Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds right.
Yeah, and because I didn't buy it. I think I bought it towards the end of 10.7. I didn't, obviously, initially I had a Windows version with a Mac version, which was very unusual. But no, Apple killed it. That's right. I guess Apple killed it immediately. But initially it was Windows, and then Apple killed it when they bought it, eMagic. And the original one I had a dongle for. I still have the dongle. It's a little white thing. I don't know if it was iLock or not. I don't remember. But I hate iLock. iLock's the worst damn system.
I'm not a big fan of dongles. I like the App Store method of being able to. I guess it's easier for people to pirate the app, but.
Well, Apple was never particularly worried about people pirating Final Cut Pro 7. You know, I mean, it's just nothing that they're really, of course, worried about. If you do, you do, and they're not going to condone it, and you couldn't do it in an academic setting necessarily very easily. And if you're in 7, you had to be on the net. If you're on the same network, it would check for serial numbers, the same serial number, and it would shut you down, shut one of the versions down.
My favorite is the copies of Final Cut Pro 10 being sold on eBay for Windows.
Right. Well, I still see that. Yeah, I still see that.
If you pay them the $30 or whatever, you deserve to lose your money.
$30. Yeah, $30. Those are the days. I remember the first version I got was Final Cut Pro. I think it was 1.5. I didn't get 1 because I was using Premiere Pro on the Mac then, but I got 1.5 as the first version. And then, of course, they updated. Did they charge for every update, every major update, full number update? I think they did.
Yeah, there was an upgrade price.
Price.
Yeah, and then if you were buying it new, there was obviously a full price. So I can't remember all the prices, but I believe that Final Cut Studio 2 was like $1,000, and Final Cut Studio 3, which they dropped the number on with Final Cut Pro 7, was like $799 for brand new, and it was like $499 for the upgrade or something like that. Or maybe it's $299 for upgrading to Final Cut 7.
And then 10 so far has been 9 years with no additional price. So if you divide $299 into 9, and that's what we're paying.
You should invite Steve Bays onto the Final Cut Radio show at some point and see if maybe you can ask him the question, why didn't you charge for an upgrade? see what he says.
He probably, that's probably
squirm.
Still, yeah, probably still a bit sensitive as far as revealing, even though he's gone from Apple, revealing anything that's too in secret or whatever. Yeah, I could have him on. I have his card. He gave me his card at the Creative Summit to talk about something else. I forget what it was. He wanted to talk about something else. I have to contact him for sure.
Yeah, well, it's Steve Bays, and I don't know. I know Estelle's at Frame.io now. We talked about that last week.
Yep.
But I'm sure she's more wanting to have Chioni and Emery Wells and other people represent Frame.io. So
right.
I don't think she's very interested in talking about Apple yet, or ever. But I'm sure there's things Steve would be willing to talk about in terms of just more of a, his commentary on the industry. It's been interesting to see the articles and interviews he's done and his insights and his perspective on kind of the current state of the video industry in a larger sense. But you're right, he's not gonna. He has coworkers and friends at Apple, and I'm sure he doesn't want to hurt that trust.
So do you think the Final Cut Pro team, the public team that we have contact with, there's been a lot of turnovers in the last 6 months, 8 months, right? Estelle left. Steve Bays left in the last year.
Year and a half,
was it? So both of them have left. Has anybody else left that we know of?
Steve left almost 2 years ago now.
Was it 2 years?
Yeah, well, I think Steve was ready to retire and enjoy life, and I think Estelle, personal things, and now she's at Frame.io, which is awesome.
Right.
So they've brought on a couple new people, and onwards and upwards. Luke is still there, and he's leading the charge. So I'm sure they're super busy right now with getting everything ready for post-production work on 10.5.
Absolutely. So once 10.5 comes out, which could be tomorrow, I certainly would expect it this week. Then there'll be all the rush of tutorials and people talking about it on YouTube and Ripple training. I should check with Steve. I'll probably message him and see. Hey, I offered to review 10.5 tutorials a couple weeks ago. I gave everybody 1 week. I'd do it for free. Nobody took me up on it. I'm not sure why. Because obviously there's tutorials being done somewhere. So what does it mean about the lack of training for 10.4 being stopped right now in June, 1 month from now? I think there's going to be something, maybe a different model for 10.5, Logic 10.5 and Final Cut Pro 10.5. Some people think, I was talking to Chris Fenwick, he was on here a couple weeks ago, and he said, nah, Final Cut Pro doesn't need training. And I disagree. I think they should have.
I've had that perspective before, just because I'm like, well, if it's such an intuitive and easy app for new kids to learn, why do they need professional training? Then I've run into people that work at facilities or coming from other systems, and I'm like, oh, there's a huge need for training.
Yes.
So it's one thing if you're the individual, you're like me and you're going to pick up the software and you're going to learn it. It's another thing if you're at a company, it's your job, and you've got to get up and running real quick. You don't have a lot of time to play around and learn things in the software. You have to have someone show you.
Well, the thing about it is, as a trainer, and I've seen this over and over and over again, there's nothing wrong with being self-taught. Okay, I'm a self-taught musician. I took very, very few lessons. I took a couple. It was really, really weird. There's this big music store in Wheaton, Maryland, where I grew up. I grew up in Silver Spring. Wheaton was the next up. It was called, I forget what the place it was called. It was a big music store, and they had music lessons there. But around the corner was this guy that did music. I forget what his name was, but I took lessons there for 2 or 3 weeks. My mother wouldn't let me go every other week, but I taught myself all these years since then. Nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to software training, there's a lot of holes in your training if you're self-taught. Unless you're really, really, really disciplined, I compare it to Swiss cheese. Yes, you can make a slice of Swiss cheese, but there's a lot of holes in that training, things you didn't know. The other day I heard somebody online, I post things about if I did a tutorial about something, and I'd put up, I did one for the comparison viewer, and somebody said didn't know that existed. That was 10.4.4.
Well, and I think there's, because my evolution or understanding of Final Cut Pro 10 has been an evolution where when it first came out, it was a relatively simple application, and as they added features, I learned those features and incorporated them. So as the product matured, my understanding evolved with it, and something like the comparison viewer is not something that I missed because I remember when they announced it.
Right.
The other thing is digging deep into the manuals, and the other thing is paying attention to what Mark and Steve say, and on their channel. So there's a lot of resources. I think the challenge that trainers have now is that you almost have to kind of be more one-on-one or Zoom conference or something, because there's so much free content available, and a lot of it's not any good. But how do you, if you think about the Final Cut Studio days, do you want to learn this software? You're not really going to find much online, or maybe kenstone.net or something, but you're not going to find a lot of resources that you now find. There's 15-year-old kids on YouTube teaching you Final Cut. I'm not saying it's all quality, but you're a lot of these people, what are they going to do? Oh, this is free, and so they just jump on the free thing. And there's tons and tons of content, and maybe they're learning things the wrong way. But that's what I think professional trainers are battling up against in terms of the way that you might have done it before, where you put out a manual and you have certifications and all that stuff. So it has to evolve, but I think there's still a need for trainers to be supported and to go around, and not even just trainers, but just people that go around and kind of give presentations about Final Cut.
Sure. But I mean, when I look at, we all know Apple's got billions and billions of dollars, right? So when I look at Blackmagic's online training, which is extensive, they have videos, they have manuals, all downloadable, all for free. I don't think there's any reason why Apple can't do the same kind of a thing. Now, of course, we have the manuals and stuff, and Blackmagic has many more applications in there, but still, the Final Cut Pro manuals, I like them. I use them all the time for referencing things. But there's at least have some level of that training online. With if you use Ripple, that's fine, but you should have some kind of a tier like Blackmagic, don't you think? Blackmagic does a great job. They have all kinds of video tutorials on there, hour long.
Yeah, I think that, like, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but I think that Apple should look into. I think they should look into maybe having Mark and Steve do some specific training that's up on the website or somewhere convenient, maybe in the App Store, or maybe they do have their workflow extension, but something that at least Mark and Steve have some free training,
Right.
and maybe making that more tied in or easier to find for people would be good.
Absolutely. Well, what about Brad training? Some Brad training.
I don't think I'm a great software trainer. It's too hard. I was
It is
working on this
hard.
video. I was trying to get screenshots. I spent 2 days getting some screenshots. It was so, because it's not just like I've got to show this feature. It's okay, what's the order I have to do everything in, and how do I
Exactly.
make it easy to follow? Which is a
Yes.
lot harder than just doing something, because I use the software every day and I use it quickly, but I don't have to explain myself. Once you have to explain yourself and you have to think, is the guy over my shoulder or gal over my shoulder going to be able to understand what I'm doing? That's really, really hard.
It is. It's definitely a skill that a lot of people don't have. And the other thing is, sometimes I see tutorials. The tutorial is pretty good, but it could have used some editing.
Yeah.
It's not only usually the audio. I see people stuttering and skipping and lip smacks and noises and stuff that I would have edited out. And when you're doing a tutorial, it's easy to do because you have plenty of B-roll. You have plenty of screenshots you can go over. Why not cut some of that junk out? You don't have to do every single one, but some of them. So I go through mine how to do that. I don't just leave all the mistakes in. Says, what do you think about, we got a Nikos, what do you think about Blackmagic catching up? Are you missing it at all in paid or non-paid projects? I don't think they're catching, you mean catching up to Final Cut? They're two different apps.
Sorry, what was the comment again? What do we think about
What do you think about
Resolve?
Blackmagic catching up? I'm not sure if he meant they have caught up, or I guess he means Resolve.
Yeah, as far as Resolve, like we talked about a little bit before, like I said, I use both, and I still think there's a lot of features in Final Cut. Like the core DNA of Final Cut Pro 10 is completely unique from any other NLE, including Resolve.
Right.
And people point to the cut page and say, well, the cut page is kind of like Final Cut Pro 10, but it's actually it's interesting and it's odd. The cut page borrows a lot of really doubles down on a lot of tape metaphors, while also trying to implement things like film strips and the magnetic timeline. So it's kind of like they're putting their feet in both camps, and I find the experience to be a little, I don't know, it's weird. it's a really weird page to try to work on, and so I find myself jumping to the edit page and Resolve a lot quicker, just because. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway,
but the free version is pretty darn powerful.
Yes, the free version is, I mean, it has everything the Studio one does, other than higher resolutions and 3D and noise reduction. But I don't see them. I don't see Resolve. Resolve feels like they're on their own path. I guess I'll put it that way.
Okay.
They're kind of, to me, it's more of a logical conclusion of what Final Cut Studio could have been, where you bring all the applications into one. And I don't see Apple doing that with Final Cut Pro 10 as much. I mean, yeah, we hope we get better audio features, building out the roles to their inevitable conclusion. and it has color corrector built in. But you notice it doesn't have separate pages for separate tasks. It's kind of like you open the tools as you need them and you close them away. So the design behind the two, I feel like it's a different mentality and geared
Right.
towards. Resolve is very much thinking about what's the TV, movie, and feature film workflow, and how do we plug into that. Whereas Final Cut Pro 10 can work for that, but it's a much more flexible application because people who don't need the complexity don't have to dive into it, whereas Resolve throws it all in your face.
Okay. So the last time you were on, we had a giveaway of LumaFusion.
Yeah.
We had he got his version. I contacted him offline, and what was his name again? And Bill
Who's doing
Solo.
your laundry?
Yeah, exactly. What he said was, I had to give him I gave him the code, and he says, my appreciation for this gift is beyond words. Next time I'm in California, I'll bring a roll of quarters and a laundry bag. That's what he says to do my laundry at the Creative Summit.
Oh,
so yeah, I
I
just wanted to make sure he had an iPad. I mean, you can use it on an iPhone, but the iPad's really much more optimal. And he says, yes, he does. He has an iPad Pro. So
great.
If I probably will be getting an iPad Pro at some point. I had to see just for LumaFusion. That's the only reason, because I have an older iPad Air 2 right now. The only time I use it is when I'm reading books in bed, for the most part. I've tried LumaFusion a few times on it. I have it set up here, but I don't use it for other things. I have a laptop and I have of course, my Mac Pro. I'm kind of surprised when I go on different forums and stuff like Ecamm Live. I'm pretty active there. I've tested microphones, I've tested cameras for them, and I've tested the software, and I'm pretty active helping people there. But two posts in the last couple of days have said, what kind of setup do you have for Ecamm Live? And of course, I go on there and say, well, I got the Mac Pro and I got 32 gigabytes of video. And everybody's going, wow, nobody has Mac Pros, it seems like, that I know. Very few people. I don't know if I know anybody specifically that has one. We have a Mac Pro 2019 group, but I don't know people in there. There's a lot of people in that group, in the Facebook group, but I don't know people that have Mac Pros. I'm kind of surprised.
Well, didn't Patrick say that if he ran by the Frame.io office, he could pick up one?
Yes, he had one from Frame.io. That's right.
I know that a friend of mine, he's a post supervisor at a company called Mystery Box here in Utah, and they bought, I think, at least one MacBook or Mac Pro, maybe more, and they have Pro Display XDRs, but they're doing 8K 60 frame a second HDR video.
Right.
So they kind of need it, and they were able to cut down their render times from multiple days to a day or less.
Sure, absolutely.
So that's a special case scenario. I don't know a lot of people. People commented that the trash can Mac Pro, the 2013 Mac Pro, like no one bought that, but I saw them in lots of places.
I think more bought that. It was more affordable, and I didn't have any need for it. I like the iMac for me better than I did the trash can. The thing about this Mac Pro, it's so well designed, and it's completely upgradable, and it's simple to upgrade. Graphics cards is a one module. You plug it in, you take a couple screws out, you plug it in, put a new one in, no cables to worry about. I keep seeing these upgrade GPUs for this Mac Pro, besides the ones that Apple have, and they've got 3 fans. I don't want any fans in this thing besides the stock ones. I want everything silent. 0. It's on right now. You can't hear it. So we'll see. I'm kind of surprised that I haven't really, besides a couple places, I haven't really run into people that I know that have a Mac Pro. So we got Ryan Vellen just said hello from Denmark. Hello, Ryan.
Hi, Ryan.
Ryan, you tell people about how you use Final Cut Pro over there. You use it for television, and people,
They do a little bit of work in Final Cut Pro 10
yeah, quite a bit of TV
at
work over there.
Metronome.
Absolutely. So people asking, is the iPad worth it for the ability to sidecar with his MacBook Pro? What do you think?
Hasn't been enough to get me to buy an iPad yet.
Okay.
I think that the sidecar feature is interesting, but what I really want is a companion app like Logic has.
I agree.
It needs to be designed for touch. It needs to be thought out for touch. And I don't necessarily need the whole application on an iPad, but just something, like I said, the color board would be really cool. If they do an audio mixer in Final Cut Pro 10, it would be awesome to just have at my desk, an iPad sitting there and be able to control levels and things, especially, with the haptic feedback or whatever.
The one with for Logic, the iPad companion app, you can change the screen. It has tabs. You can bring up a mixing board with sliders. You can bring up a full-featured effect, just like it's the real hardware. So it's not limited to one or two. I think there's 3 or 4 different fields you can actually use with it. And that's the same kind of thing with Final Cut. What would I want for Final Cut? Oh, how about a keyframe editor? I'd love that. Just a standalone keyframe editor in the app, companion app, where I can expand it up. It's not taking room in the timeline. And, of course, like you said, a roles-based mixer, if that's coming. I think they're going to improve audio for sure. I hope, audio roles, an audio roles mixer, people keep saying that.
Yeah.
So I agree. I like to see that as well. So that would be interesting. 10.5 and on the iPhone store, the iPad store, they come up with a new Final Cut Pro 10.5 companion app. That would be phenomenal.
Well, I think we should keep refreshing our pages, and
I agree.
And if something drops, give me a call.
Well,
but I don't see anything
what
dropping right now.
What the heck is that? This is weird. Let me pull this up.
I won't be able to see your screen.
Yeah. Well, what I'm going to show, let me pull this up real quick. Very bizarre. I'm going to take a screenshot of it in case it disappears, but Final Cut Pro on the App Store has a Ripple training logo beside it. And it's the app, but it has a Ripple training logo beside it. Now that's bizarre.
Sorry, on the App Store?
On the App Store, I just did a search for Final Cut Pro. I'm going to screen grab this. And it has a Ripple training logo beside it. Let me pull it over here. Look, everybody can see that. Final Cut Pro says open, and this logo is Ripple Training. That is really strange. I guess that's a glitch, as they call it.
Are you saying where the Final Cut Pro icon should be?
Are you getting the same thing?
No.
Yeah. I'll send it to you. I did a screen grab.
I should stop hitting. I need to open Final Cut. Okay. There.
Must have been a glitch. Let me pull it up again.
I definitely don't have that.
Now the Final Cut Pro logo is back. So, but I have a screen grab. It had Ripple next to it. What? Ripple bought Final Cut Pro 10.5? They got more cash than I thought.
Oh.
Now you're black now, Brad, for some reason. Did you switch cameras?
No, something turned off. I don't know. Hold on.
Well, we'll go to the Final Cut Pro Radio HQ rear window live cam. See who's at the bird feeder. This is my actual backyard. It's live. I have a camera set up out there. There's my bird feeder, my barbecue. There you are. Now you're back. There you are. What was it? What was it?
So, well, I forgot that my Blackmagic Cinema camera was unplugged, so it was running off of battery, and so I guess it just hit that kind of like hour and a half, and
okay,
battery finally shut off. So that was exciting. It was trying to tell me something like we've been on too long.
Exactly.
Just sitting here hoping.
So Nikos says, I think it's a bug, doesn't show up on mine. I know, it shouldn't be there, and now the Final Cut Pro icon's back, but it was Ripple training. Unless that's something in the future. Maybe they're updating the App Store right now, somebody said.
I don't think the Final Cut Pro icon would change to Ripple training.
No. That would be silly. But it was there. I do have a screen grab of it, so. For professional reason. I don't know how many times I've looked at something online and go, that doesn't look right, and I didn't grab the screen, so when I go to refresh, it's gone, of course.
Yeah. Well, all right. I should probably get back to it. But like I said, I'll keep an eye out, and maybe we'll have some breaking news today or tomorrow or Thursday or Friday.
Yeah. It could happen at any time. As I've said, they don't need an event. So Nikos says, Richard, I think you broke the App Store from refreshing too much. That's probably exactly what happened. I agree. That could have been it. I don't refresh that much, but I do check on it a couple of times a day. So Ryan Vellin says, next year we're moving to Master Chef to Final Cut Pro 10. It's been an Avid for years, and finally we're moving to Final Cut. People are very excited. So there you go. That's a big
Sweet.
TV show.
That's awesome.
So Gert Crack says, tomorrow is Meatball Day in the Netherlands, Final Cut Pro 10.5 Ripple release day. That's what he says. So Justine Paula Roblard says hers has the iJustine logo. I think that's just a joke.
I don't know what the iJustine logo looks like.
I don't either. Gert says Ripple has multiple what? I hope it's worth the wait. Well, listen, they're not going to please everybody. When Final Cut Pro 10.5 does come out, everybody's not going to be pleased, but I just want to see what they've been up to. I mean, they've been working on it for a while. Even if you go from Metal 2, which was last October, that's 7 months at this point. 10.4.8 came out in December, which is 5 months. But 10.4.4 is a year before that, and then, of course, 10.4 was 29 months ago.
Okay. At the beginning, we had somebody talking about GPUs.
Yes.
According to the App Store page, it says modern Metal Engine uses all the GPUs in your Mac to accelerate graphics tasks, including rendering, compositing, real-time effects, playback, exporting, and more. So I don't know if that's a multiple eGPUs concern, but according to this, if you say had a Mac Pro with multiple GPUs, it would use all the GPUs according to their release notes.
So Scott says, I will be disappointed if we don't get extended by Cubics and Mesh Warp, whatever the heck that is. I think he's just joking.
I don't know what extended by Cubics is. Mesh Warp. I'm trying to think if there's a way to do any sort of Mesh Warp right now. Not really, but
what is Mesh
Motion.
Warp? Is that you take a 3D image and you have and you warp it or something?
No, Mesh Warp would be like you have a grid overlaid over your image and you're wanting to warp it in different ways, so you pull on different points to warp it. It's essentially like when you've got the ripple effect, that makes everything look like water waves. That's gotcha. A mesh warp over it, but you can't obviously control the the actual settings of it. I don't know if there's a way to do that, and I've never really thought about it or cared. I think he's just being silly. As I would tell my children, you're being silly.
Well, what about motion?
I don't know if there is. I've never attempted to. I've used distort, which is similar. I mean, there's a lot of transform tools, but I don't know about a mesh warp.
What I meant was, what do you think about motion being updated with Final Cut? Because, of course, it's going to be updated with Final Cut.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about talking about those features.
No, I don't know what you're talking about when you're talking about mesh warp. That's beyond. I mean, I understand. I've seen the images with these mesh grids around it, and you pull points and distort. I understand that, but I don't think I'll be doing much with that.
I would be surprised if Motion Compressor didn't update with Final Cut. That seems like it always happens. Although, what's Logic's companion apps, Main Stage, and do they still support those?
Good question. That's for live. That's for doing stuff live. I don't have that Main Stage app.
I didn't see anything on the press release about.
I didn't look for it.
Those.
I didn't look for it. So, just the iPad app was updated, and Logic Pro itself was updated to 10.5.
Yep.
So Ben Bowser says Motion VFX's Puppet tool.
Yeah.
I guess
that is that does use mesh warp as well.
That's what I thought.
That's true. I do have that. I do have the M Puppet. So.
Oh, you do?
I guess. Yeah. I guess I do have the ability to do that, and that. In fact, actually, the way the M Puppet tool works would be really cool built into Motion. But then again, Simon's already made a plugin for it, and he probably likes having some exclusivity on that. So.
Right, but Simon also had the. What was that?
The M.
The transition tool that Apple came up with?
Yeah, it's like a morph cut or something.
Morph cut, yeah, exactly. I've used that a few times. If you don't have too many frames missing between two, a cut, if you don't have too many frames missing, it works fairly well. But the person has to be kind of still.
Yeah, or you got to find a frame where they're kind of back in a similar position and not a lot is changing on their face. The biggest frustration I have with those, whether it's Simon's or the Apple one, is I wish they'd be a little bit smarter in identifying heads, because sometimes like backgrounds or weird parts of the image morph that you're like, well, the background didn't move, so why are you morphing that part of it? You know, it'd be nice if it had some Face ID and it just said, oh, that's a person's face, and we'll stick with that part to morph.
Right, exactly.
It must be using some technology to do that, though, but I don't know. Sometimes it's funny when it does mess up a little bit. Or one of the things I did just for fun when I was cutting off the tracks, because I shot a lot of the interviews in the same room, so I had 3 backgrounds. And I can't remember who I morphed like Thomas Grove Carter into Steve Martin. It was really funny looking, really creepy. It was just an accident. I just accidentally applied the flow transition in the wrong place, and it was really funny.
So one of the things that I've been using recently is that app from Filmic Pro, Double Take. So I've been doing a podcast during the pandemic for local. I've been interviewing shop owners, people, different kind of people. I interviewed my boxing instructor. I interviewed a guy who does a lot of streaming and stuff. And I go down to Main Street, Sykesville a lot. And they have Main Street, Sykesville is like a main street from the 1800s. It really is. But I've been going down there, and normally I would switch my camera, front and back. Front, to see the view. Then I switch it back to me if I'm talking. And then I said, well, why don't I try to, double take? It worked fantastic. I'm recording both what I'm looking at and myself as I'm walking down the street. And it syncs. It has the same time code for both clips. They're named A and B, but you take them into Final Cut, easy multicam, very simple. And then you switch back. You can switch back and forth, but I've actually put both of them on the screen. One of them smaller than the other, and I've shrunk them down. So I really like that, and they're both 1080p. And then I have more choices. So now I'm using that a lot. The only thing is, you only have one angle. You can't, the angle of the phone has to be just about perfect to get both you in it and the thing you're looking at. You don't have a lot of leeway there. You got to hold it at a certain angle and a certain height. And then you can get it successfully, because I shot the selfie camera and then front camera, of course.
I wonder when they're going to put 2 ultra-wide lenses on the front and back and line them up and allow you to do 360 video with the iPhone. That's and then they could solve your problem as far as the angles, and then in Final Cut you could, cut back and forth. I know Steve Martin was showing that off, like, hey, listen, you may not want to do 360 video, but here's a good case scenario. I can film myself and what I'm looking at and everything else in this 360 sphere. And I would imagine with the ultra wide lens, you just slap the same one front and back on an iPhone, and I don't know how design wise that would be laid out, but it'd be pretty cool.
So that guy that's been talking about all the iPhone 12 stuff, forget what his name is.
Prosser? John
Yeah,
Prosser.
Prosser. So he had a new update. Yesterday he had a video talking about specifics. Haven't seen anything about the cameras other than they're the same. I haven't seen any specs about if there's a new sensor, 3 times optical zoom, 4 times optical zoom. And the only way that I'll be updating my phone is if there's something in it for video, better video. If it's the same, I won't be updating, because I didn't update my 6. I went from 6 to 11. The 6S Pro, the 6S one, Max, whatever the heck it was called, to the 11 Pro Max. So I waited for 5 versions before I updated, because the 6, whatever the 6 Plus,
6S Plus, yeah,
6S Plus had was the first one with 4K, and I bought it because I could shoot 4K, and I've been using it ever since.
Yeah.
So Ben Bowser says, we talked about this earlier, Final Cut Pro 10 XML 1.9.
Yep.
So 1.9 is not here yet. And Ben says, no update if the camera isn't worth it. Right on, Richard. That's what Ben says. That's the reason I update. What else do I need? I mean, the phone works. For texting, it works. I can do, regular photography and stuff. But if the camera's updated dramatically, I would get to 12. If it's not, well, dramatically, I mean, if it's better low light performance, whatever they're going to do, I like to see a 3X lens, a 4X lens. That would be cool.
You should have Ben on sometime, and the two of you can complain about how Apple screwed over trainers.
Well, I don't really want to do that.
Have Ben on or complain about Apple? Or
no,
both?
I mean, no. Ben can come on for sure. We'll get Ben on, but I don't want to. Let me get that back here. I got to get this back.
Apple
we got enough complainers now.
Apple will pull you off the resource page or whatever for.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. I was initially surprised. Initially, it was for Final Cut Pro Radio, the podcast. No, initially it was FCPX.TV. That was the first one that came on. Absolutely. And FCPX, because that's been around since the birth of Final Cut Pro. And then the second one, I noticed one on there one time, and it's, Final Cut Pro Radio is on there as well. So that's pretty cool. I've been on since 5 years. I've been doing Final Cut Pro Radio. I haven't stopped. I mean, but you look at my podcast history, though. I've been doing podcasts for 15 years. It's easy to start a podcast. It's much harder to keep the podcast going month after month, year after year. It's for Final Cut Pro, especially in the summertime. That's the worst time for Final Cut Pro news. Now, if 10.5 comes out, we'll have something to talk about for a month or two.
Yeah.
We'll get you on here, Ben. Absolutely. We'll get you on.
Just gonna share my screen real quick. This should. Let's see if I do that. I got a kid yelling at me. I probably need to run off, but let's go to this page. So if I switch here, so this must be the. Are you seeing this?
Yes, I am.
So there's the iJustine logo. So this was showing up. This Ripple was showing up right here for you.
Yes, exactly.
It's probably just a load issue because you search Final Cut Pro 10, and then you've got then you've got all these logos. So it just was loading up. So yeah, that could have actually happened to that other person. iJustine could have.
Well, that's true. That's true. It could have.
I didn't realize Core Melt had some templates on there. I don't know what that is. I've never heard of that. Total adjustment for Final Cut Pro. Anyway.
I think it's adjustment layer, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. So, all sorts of little fun, weird things I haven't looked at before. There's some stuff I recognize. Extra Pro.
Yep.
And Sync and Link. So, anyway. No updates here on my end. We'll I better go. I hear a kid yelling for me, so I'm gonna sign off. I don't know if you're gonna keep chatting to. I'll keep an eye on and I'll dial back in if I see something. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I see just like a little, looks like a photo background that's brown. Yeah. All right. Well, see you later, world. Might check in later. All right. Well, that'll be an offline. Final Cut Pro Radio, not live. We'll see you. Thanks, Richard. Yep. Bye.
Sorry, I had the mute switch on. So the idea is, thanks for letting me know. It's back on now. Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro 10.5. There's no way that the Final Cut Pro team is going to allow Logic to be 10.5, and they're going to stay at 10.4.8 very long. Ben says, is that background from the TV show Decker? Something on BBC. I don't know what, I didn't recognize the show, but they have a whole bunch of them for free. I should be there now, right? Yeah. So we have some arguments about something, but now we got the audio. It looks like a Wings background. It does look like Wings a little bit. But the thing is that they have a bunch of free ones. The BBC put out a bunch of free ones. Ben says, I'm thinking the Final Cut Pro update this weekend at the Post-Production World online event or WWDC. The problem with that, Ben, is they're going to have to, I mean, they're not going to have to, but they should be updating their screen grabs for the lessons, right? To the newest, latest version. So I presume they'll get it before then so they have chance to upgrade. Nicholas says, wouldn't it be fun if they came out with 10.4.9, not for his OCD? So, no, we don't want Logic at 10.5 and Final Cut at 10.4.9. We don't want that. We want 10.5. Don't you all want 10.5? So 10.5, I'm going to say they're going to have some new, obviously a lot of new features. Better audio, a roles-based mixer of some sort. Everybody talks about collaboration. We'll see if that happens. What about the proxy workflow? I guess they're going to have the proxy workflow better. So you have more. Ben says he loved 10.4.9. It could be. Obviously, Apple going to do what the heck they want to do. But I'm thinking 10.5 at this point. Sense Logic, yesterday I would have said 10.4.9. But, yes, Ben says mixer, yes. The roles-based mixer, I think there's a very strong possibility of a roles-based mixer in Final Cut Pro 10.4.5. Jeff says it was meant to resolve, not Media Composer. I was talking and typing at the same time. Yes, sometimes that's difficult. But I think we're going to see definitely better audio in better audio features in Final Cut Pro 10.5. Let me just see if this guy's here. He's probably not. Collapse multicam, absolutely. Ben says collapse multicam. Yeah, people have been wanting that for a while. They collapse multicam. Right now you can't collapse a multicam. Let me just pull this up here. Let me just see if by any chance. Tony isn't online. Okay. So there we go. There's another view from the Final Cut Pro HQ rear window live cam. So it's been windy out here the last couple of days. It's been very windy. All right, now we're getting a bunch of comments. A better rendering system, not deleting renders on every project open. Visually unnest compound clips so you can tweak rebuilds in your main project timeline. Absolutely. Expand the compound clip right in the timeline. Just a little turn down arrow, a disclosure triangle, or a keyboard shortcut, or right click, and the compound clip expands right in the existing timeline. I don't like jumping in and out of compound clips. I just don't like that. Joris V says, I can't believe all these plugins can track and it's not natively in Final Cut Pro yet. Thicker handles for edit points. Thicker handles. I'm not sure if I like thick handles. Also, break apart multicam. The other thing would be to select clips in the timeline and make a multicam from them. So if you start working on a project and you're working on a bunch of clips and they should be aligned. Collapse or break apart multicam, yes, Ben says. So who thinks we're going to see Final Cut Pro 10.5 this week? I do. 3D mask tracking. I'm not sure what the 3D mask tracking is. I don't do much 3D stuff. But I think we're going to see 10.5 possibly tomorrow. It could come out what the heck? It could come out today for all we know. Let me just check to make sure, but I think it's going to be tomorrow. All right, Final Cut Pro is still on 10.4.8 from what I can see. Still on 10.4.8. But we'll have to see. That could happen at any time. Joris V says he believes 10.4.5 is coming out. I think it's going to be out today or tomorrow. I can't imagine it being that long when Logic Pro is more, it has a bigger number, 10.5, than Final Cut Pro. That's what I'm basing that on. Stabilization for multicam clips. Can I ease in and out all keyframe points yet? Apple has said Final Cut Pro is a DSLR camera model. They make the body, you buy the accessories you want. Ben says he can't see Logic and Final Cut Pro updated on the same day. Probably not. I think so. Everybody released a new version already. Final Cut Pro is due, absolutely. The last version, 10.4.8, were both December 10th, 2019. You mean Logic and Final Cut? They both were updated in Final Cut. I mean, they both were updated in December. I don't know if they are updated exactly at the same time. But I think it'll be out this week because Apple's doing that thing at Post-Production World. They're doing there's a whole track of Apple stuff. It'd be nice, listen, just to make people work, right? Just to make people work. That would be fine. They have to redo all their slides. That would be fine with me. Oh, that's interesting. Let me check that. Next Tuesday, sticking with the Tuesday tradition. Let me check something here. Somebody just said that. Let me see if that's true. Let me just check this while I have everybody on here. No, somebody said the Final Cut Pro free trial page was down, but I'm getting it here. So one of the things that people said was let me just pull this up, was turn these titles off. Why would they release Final Cut Pro 10.5 when they just started the trial for 10.4.8? I don't see where that really has any bearing. I mean, they did it with Logic, so obviously they can do that. He said he just got a bug on App Store showing another icon as well. Yeah, that was weird. Final Cut Pro. Weren't there free versions of Final Cut Pro and Logic till August? It was 90 days from whenever you got the trial. So that's correct. Jeff, the free trials were extended to 90 days rather than 30, which it was typically. What are the biggest update features you're hoping for or expecting? Well, without knowing anything, I want audio improvements. I find audio clunky in Final Cut. I know a lot of people don't, but I do. Coming from a Logic background, I just like to see easier way to work with audio. I don't want to jump in and out of compound clips to apply effects to a whole bunch of clips and things. I want a master fader for volume, for the volume. Round trip to motion. We'll see if that happens. That was a cool feature in 7. You could take a motion project and actually put it on the Final Cut Pro timeline, and it would play back like it was a clip. You could also right-click on it and open in motion. Go to motion, make your changes. When you saved, it was updated in the Final Cut Pro 10 timeline, Final Cut Pro 7 timeline. So that was very cool. Jeff says, yes, I agree with audio. There's lots of things. What has the Final Cut Pro team been doing all this time? They've been doing something. It was 27 months old before the coronavirus struck. So they've been doing something, and it's probably a pretty big update because it's been 29 months since 10.4 came out. So bus for each roll and a master bus for audio. Yes, they need a bus. They keep saying a roles-based mixer. However that's going to work, they need some kind of a mixing device. I'm sure it'll be innovative. Ben Bowser says, I'm going to say an announcement about the update at the Post-Production World event. Ben, I think we're going to see it before then. I think we're going to see it tomorrow, later today. I think we're going to see it. I don't think they're going to wait that long. We'll see. But anyway, everybody's quite sure Final Cut Pro 10.5 is here. It's coming. It's going to be here at any point. Right? Everybody agrees that? Since Logic Pro 10 it came out. Let me just bring this up one more time. So the one thing is, it's doing it again. So if you look at my screen, oh, that's interesting. It changed. Very interesting. It changed. It had the ripple icon again. And when I brought it over to this screen, it had the ripple icon. But that's just a glitch, I'm sure. So let's open. Oh, still 10.4.8. We'll check when it comes. Yeah, Ben says, I hope so. I'm anxious, bored from sitting at home. Exactly. That's why they should put 10.5 out now. Let us work out the bugs. We have something brand new, exciting for the rest of the summer. Working on, doing tutorials, whatever, figuring out the new version on whatever it's big. But look, it's got to be big. It can't just be a little update with a few features. It's got to be big. 10.5, motion and compressor will all be 10.5. Yep. Logic is leading the way. That's fine. But Final Cut Pro 10.5 will be coming out today or tomorrow. And when it comes out, Final Cut Pro Radio TV Live will come back on the air. I'm set up to go live right now. I can come back on the air in 5 minutes if they release it today. I will keep an eye out now that we got Logic Pro 10 came out. Let's check the backyard. There's my backyard. I have 1.5 acres. This is my backyard. I got to get it mowed. Dogwood trees, pine trees, a lot of oak trees. Look at the skies. That is facing west. That is facing west. Not due west, but it is facing west. All right, everyone. I think I'm going to head out of here. We've been on for quite a while. So this is the interesting point. Final Cut FCP XML 1.9 in Logic, not Final Cut Pro 10. That's correct. It's not in Final Cut Pro 10, so that's a clue that it's coming. Ben says, pretty yard. Yes, I really like it. Don't want to start a new project in 10.4. Jeff says, if it updates, I will look for your live feed to hear what everyone thinks. Got to go. Thanks, Richard. Yeah, I'm going to head out myself, everyone. Ben says, thanks for the show. Richard, you do a great job with this. I appreciate it, Ben. We'll get you on the show. We'll get you on after 10.5 comes out. We'll talk about it. Sans complaints. We won't do too much complaining. We want to keep it fairly positive about Final Cut Pro 10. So thanks, everyone, for tuning in. This is Final Cut Pro Radio TV. So I did I've put up 150 Final Cut Pro Radio TV live events. 150 of them. This, plus or minus. Thank you, sure. 10.5. Ben says he'll complain about what they didn't do. Waiting news. So you guys and gals, let me pull this up. Go to FCPRadio.com. That's where the podcast is. Also, FCPX.tv. I'll keep track of things there when Final Cut Pro 10.5 comes out. I will have a master list of Final Cut Pro 10.5 articles. I'll start it today, getting the page ready to populate. There'll be a master list. There'll probably be a dozen different places you can go to find out about Final Cut Pro 10.5. Of course, follow along on YouTube, Richard Taylor TV, of course. And that's going to be it for today, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to head out of here. I will keep track. If Final Cut Pro 10.5 comes out, I will be back on within 10 minutes. Follow along in those places. All right, everyone. My name's Richard Taylor. Thanks for stopping by Final Cut Pro Radio TV Live. Thanks, everyone.